Chapter 1441. Lisa crouched, picking up the shattered pieces of what used to be a bowl. Crystal, yet to be appeased, gave Lisa a kick. I had enough of you. Do you know who I am? How could you make me this kind of trash? Lisa's eyes remained fixated on the mess. This wasn't the first time. Crystal had been throwing tantrums these days, always getting angry all of a sudden. Lisa's patience had reached its limit. The food you call trash is the chicken that fed on grains and ran around the mountain all day long. It's organic food. I specially used expensive morels to brew you chicken soup. Our circumstances are nowhere near the Heaths, but you have better food and clothes than the average person. Just what is not enough? It's not only our circumstances. You're nowhere as good as my mother's toe. It's all because of you, you witch. Why did you do that back then? My parents hate me now. They used to love me so much. Linus too. Crystal rambled on and on. Her rant was on a loop every single day. She would go on and on about how good the Heath family was. Lisa had been putting up with it because she knew how awful a dramatic downfall in social status could be. Enough. As you said, they're the Heaths, and you have nothing to do with them. Do I have to remind you of this again? Lisa threw the shards in her hands away. She continued, yes, I did switch the babies that year. And why did I do that? It was so you could live a life of luxury. I did it for you. Yet, at the end of the day, you're blaming everything on me. If you had behaved, would you have ended up this way? If you hadn't provoked Molly, the Heaths wouldn't have found out about the truth. Why did things turn out this way? It seems like I've spoiled you too much all these years. Exposed, Crystal couldn't manage her expression any longer. Shut up. Who told you to switch us? If I had been born into a humble family, I wouldn't have had to experience the dramatic difference. Since you bestowed me luxury, why couldn't you make it last forever? I had planned out everything for you and yet you're blaming me. Huffed Lisa. Yes, you're the one to be blamed. My mother is the graceful Mrs. Heath, not a maid like you. The sheer sight of you disgusts me. Crystal then ran out. Lisa popped a vein as she smiled bitterly. Karma, oh, karma. Back then, she risked her life to switch the babies. Lisa didn't wish for Crystal to be grateful, yet this was how Crystal repaid for the luxury she enjoyed in the past. Karma indeed existed. Her daughter treated her the same way she treated the child of another. Lisa's husband, Alban Archer, was a nobody in the mountains. She was the one who paved a future for themselves. Now, even he had to hide deep in the mountains because of Lisa and Crystal. How could Lisa not be mad after the reputation she had built was tarnished? The place was a mess, and her daughter lacked affection for her. Frustrated, she kicked the shattered pieces on the floor. Alban slapped Lisa. You deserve it. It's because of you that I have to live in this kind of place in secrecy, you bitch. I can't even use the money I have. Ire blazed in her widened eyes. You slapped me. Previously, Alban had always been at her beck and call. They didn't meet up often, but he was a gentleman every time they met. It was as though he had turned into a new person. Yeah, you think the Heath family is still around to protect you. You had their support in the past, but not anymore. You're just a maid. Don't get ahead of yourself. Chapter 1442. Lisa charged at Alban, and a fight broke out. She called for her brother, Angus Walker. Angus, who was in the next room, wanted to go out. His wife, who was doing her nails, pulled him back. What are you going out for? Alban's venting the emotions he's been bottling up. You might be beaten up as well if you go out there. She's my sister. We're able to come this far thanks to her. You couldn't have worn expensive clothes if not her. What a joke. As you said, we were able to come this far thanks to her. Yes, life was good the past few years, but what about now? We have houses in the city and money, but we can't use them at all. How long do we have to hide here? Lisa has offended someone we shouldn't mess with. If it wasn't for her, although we might not be that well off, we wouldn't need to live this kind of life. Standing by the door, Lisa overheard everything Tara said. Who would have guessed that this was the very same person who always welcomed Lisa with a bright smile when she came home? Lisa booted the door open. So, This is how you think of me. Before this, it would take a single frown on Lisa's face to make Tara nervous. But now, Tara appeared indifferent while painting her nails. Alban should have gone all out. Hiram shot her a glare. Cut it out. Did I say something wrong? We were doing so fine in Aldenvine. But we had to come all the way here because of her. You're willing to tolerate it, but not me. If you can't take it, you might as well leave. No one's stopping you, barked Lisa with a swollen and bleeding face. Leave. You've offended the Heaths. Where else can we go? Tara kicked the stool next to her foot, giving Lisa a cold look. How frustrating. Hiram sighed. Don't take it to heart, Lisa. You're not to be blamed. If it wasn't for you, we would have been fishermen in that village. Instead of responding, Lisa muttered, is it really my fault? Lisa's sole wish was to pave a bright future for her daughter so that she wouldn't be looked down on like Lisa was during her younger days. How did things turn out this way? Sitting by the door, Lisa stared blankly at the setting sunlight by the horizon. It had only been a month and they had had enough of the solitude. How could they embrace it for an eternity? An idea flashed across her mind. Since she was the cause of it, how about going to the Heaths to beg for mercy for her family? She deemed that it was a good idea. The next day, she realized that Crystal and Alban were gone. Lisa was so angry that she stomped on her foot. Crystal couldn't adapt to the mountains, so she wished to return to the city. She must have gone crazy. She wouldn't be able to keep herself under the radar when identity verification was prevalent in conventional society. The years spent with the Heath family had formed a bond between them, so it was possible that they could accept her. The Heath family might let her off the hook, but what about Yale? Crystal held on to the last ray of hope, her baby. Yale might not do anything to her because of the baby. Her first destination after leaving the mountain was the mall. She was ready to buy a few clothes for herself. Surprisingly, she ran into Olivia and Molly there. Yale took the long way to pick Molly up, and she was nestled in his arms. They didn't act like siblings at all. Molly, you're still recovering. Don't tire yourself out. I'm fine, Yale. I feel much better. Aren't you busy these days? Why did you take the long way just to pick me up? It's a waste of time. Anything comes after you, Molly. Yale planted a kiss on Molly's head. Crystal's heart dipped to the pit of her stomach. Only then did Crystal realize that Yale had never regarded Molly as his sister. She had been deceived. The person Yale loved was Molly. That explained his reaction back then. What would that make Crystal, though? Her hand reached her slightly bulging belly as she stared at Molly menacingly. Why did she have to live like a rat in the gutter while Molly could enjoy the life and the man that once belonged to her? Chapter 1443. This side of Yale was foreign to Crystal. Even during the time he treated her well and smiled at her, it was different from the way he smiled at Molly. This was genuine love. Even from his eyes, she could tell that he was smitten. It was as though Molly was a fragile doll. He genuinely cared for her, afraid that she might slip or fall at any time. It was completely different from the facade he showed Crystal. The cold revelation struck her, and a chill ran up to her from her feet. Her face was void of color. Even a fool knew what kind of person Yale was. It turned out he had never once loved her. His years of pursuit were simply a means to get acquainted with the Heath family. Linus and Mason had tried to talk sense into her, but her head was teeming with ideas to take revenge on Ethan. Their advice was like water off a duck's back. Finally, she realized how foolish she was. Considering how Yale was willing to relinquish everything he had in the Kingston family for Molly, she held a special place in his heart. She was above everything and anything. Crystal stroked her belly, feeling her hope smothered. Actually, she came back to beg Yale to let her off the hook. By using their baby, she hoped they could live a good life together. That hope was now replaced by a bitter taste. Fortunately, she had found out about the couple's relationship. Otherwise, approaching Yale so rashly would result in a death wish. Only still, she could never tolerate how Molly had snatched her place and man away. Crystal vowed to get back at Molly for this. Olivia stopped in her tracks and looked back. Molly noticed something was off and asked, "What's the matter, Olivia?" Olivia scanned behind them. There was no one suspicious around, so she returned a smile. I must be seeing things. A second ago, her senses caught an unfriendly gaze on her. But it seemed like she was imagining things. A while after the group left the mall, Crystal sneaked out of the basement parking lot. Her temporary stay was Albin's old hideout, a basement under a bar. It was a place the sunlight couldn't reach. The men turned it into a filthy place with all the smoking and drugs. By the time Crystal returned, Albin was hovering over a young lady of her age on the couch. The squeaky voice annoyed Crystal. Although Crystal was rebellious, she had never mingled with these kinds of people. They simply made her feel sick in the stomach. She almost threw up there. Her sophisticated upbringing was etched in her, making her the polar opposite of these barbarians. Now that she had to depend on them, she forced herself to tolerate the situation. Are you done yet? I have something to talk to you about. She overlooked the two on the couch. Albin retreated hastily, completely unbothered by the fact that his daughter was right next to him. Crystal, you're looking for me. Are you out of money? He shoved the young lady away, who sized Crystal up before primping her skirt and lighting up a cigarette. Don't act like my father. Disgusted, she would never acknowledge someone like him as her father. Fine, fine, fine. I'm not your father. Albin put himself lower than her, not because he cared about her but because the baby in her belly belonged to the Kingstons. I need your help. Fire away. I'll give you whatever you want. I want Molly dead. Crystal sneered. After giving it a thought, she added, and Olivia, that bitch, too. Olivia was the cause of everything. If she had not returned, things wouldn't have escalated this far. She resented Molly, but she resented Olivia more. Olivia, Molly, see you guys in hell. Chapter 1444. Olivia had brought her kids back, and the Heaths had managed to find their biological daughter. The two happy occasions gave Mason the reason to organize a party for them to reveal that Molly was his daughter, not Crystal. The prominent figures in the circle received an invitation. At that moment, Olivia received a call from Warren. It had been a long time since she last contacted him. She vanished in thin air after bringing significant meaning to his world, leaving him lovesick. Even his mother kept reminding him how nice Olivia was, telling him not to miss his chance. Warren clearly knew the bloody grudges between them. If Olivia found out that he was the person who had killed Mona, she would be enraged. He understood that very well, but the moment he fell for her, there was no stopping him. He stared at their chat history, his mind replaying the moments they spent together. He knew that he had fallen hard for her. Olivia had been aloof to Warren these days. That was what he had wished for. Yet, now, he realized how much he missed her. Today, there was a mission for him. It was as though heaven had bestowed him a reason for him to contact her. He mentioned that he had something important to talk to her about. He wished to meet up at a quiet private restaurant. Warren let his eyes take in Olivia's beauty. Her elegance couldn't be compared to that of the past. He couldn't look into her eyes. It was as if she were a shining pearl. Actually, he did suspect her reason for approaching him. However, when she stopped contacting him for a long time, he began missing her. It's been a while. How have you been? He initiated a talk. She shook her head. Not that great. There was an accident not long ago. Olivia tested the water, intending to see through his motive behind this meetup. Accident? What accident? He asked, a tinge of concern fleeting across his face. She let out a bitter smile. It's in the past. I was lucky to survive. How's your mother doing? The cream you gave her works. She has always cared about her looks. She's happy that the scar has faded a lot. Every single day, she keeps asking when you'll visit her. Olivia shook her head again. I don't think that's a good idea. It's inconvenient. Almost instantly, Warren grabbed her hand. Why not? Didn't you say you like me? He was getting anxious. The 2 years of flirting were well spent. Staring at his eyes, which were only on her this whole time, Olivia knew that he had taken the bait. We don't have a future together. Is it because of your ex-husband? Warren was aware of how possessive Ethan was. Even after the divorce, Ethan didn't plan to let Olivia off the hook. She wore a difficult expression. You'd better stop asking questions. I don't want to drag you into this. Olivia, come with me, his voice urged. Baffled, she questioned back. Go with you. Where to? To a safe place, somewhere far from that monster. Olivia didn't avoid his gaze. Am I in danger here? Just come with me. Even if it's safe now, it'll be dangerous in the future. Why? I don't get it. Olivia, I won't hurt you. Just leave Aldenvine immediately or you might get killed. She narrowed her eyes. Why? Do you know something? Chapter 1445. Something was holding Warren back from blurting the truth. Instead of forcing him to speak up, Olivia withdrew her hand from his. If it puts you in a tough spot, you don't have to say anything. Let's dig in. I gotta go soon. Olivia, as if he had made an important decision to speak up, he paused momentarily. Olivia, a friend of mine works for a mysterious organization. He received a message just recently. A mysterious organization. What's that? She feigned ignorance. Some sort of a national assassination organization. They'll do everything for money. Killing, for example, assassins. Olivia's expression changed tremendously as though she was reminded of something horrible. Don't be afraid. Warren knew that the night she had the preterm delivery plagued her like a demon. I won't let anyone hurt you. What kind of message was it? He was ordered to kill someone. And that's me, isn't it? Olivia managed a helpless smile. I'm used to this. This is not the first. I encountered a lot of assassins during those years. I bet this won't be the last. Thanks for reminding me as a friend. Sorry, but I think I have to go now. She stood, ready to leave. However, Warren abruptly grabbed her hand. Don't go. I'm a bad omen, Vern. I bring bad luck to the people around me. My family, my friends, and even my pets died because of me. You'll be one of my victims too. Olivia, I chose to tell you the truth because I want to help you. He licked his lip, evidently anxious. The person targeting you ain't a nobody. Come with me, Olivia. If you stay, it's only a matter of time before you. As Olivia had expected, the big fish would take the bait as long as she had the patience. The time she spent on him was worth it. Vern, frankly speaking, someone has been trying to kill me at all costs since years ago. Until today, I still don't know who she is. I've been living in secrecy all these years to avoid her. But I don't want to run away anymore. I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I be avoiding and hiding? She caressed her belly. Her eyes were red. Do you know that there was a group of men hot on my heels when I was still pregnant? It was pouring heavily, and I bled. My friend even died right before my eyes. Guilt grew in Warren. Olivia, there are a lot of things that are beyond our control. Vern, if you truly see me as a friend, can you help me out? How? Does your friend have any information about the employer? As long as I can find and kill the employer, I'll be free. Warren was stunned, not expecting that from her. His expression had given it all. He knew something. Olivia continued, sorry, if it puts you in a tough spot, let's pretend I didn't say that. Nevertheless, I'm happy that you reminded me of this. I'll be careful, let's not meet up anymore. I don't want to bring you bad luck. Olivia, Warren's lips parted as he struggled internally. She withdrew her hand and flashed him a smile. Goodbye. Thanks for keeping me company for the last 2 years. The throes of illness were awful, but you were there to cheer me on. You gave me light. He watched her leave, recalling the woman who was buried under Mona that night. Olivia's face covered in Mona's blood flashed before his eyes as her scream rang in his ears. Right before Olivia vanished from his view, he chased after her and blocked her way. Olivia, I'll help you. Chapter 1446. Olivia acted as though she couldn't bring herself to push Warren into the fray. Forget it, I don't want to drag you into the mess. That person is ruthless. If I wasn't lucky, I would have been long dead. You're a normal person. I don't want to drag you down. Olivia, do you think that a normal person would be able to befriend such a man? Warren figured that he had to show his sincerity if he wished to be with her. Vern, what? Olivia, I'll tell you who I am one day, but before that, I'll help you catch that person. Her eyelids fluttered profusely. You know who wants me dead. I don't, but I can look into it. I have my sources. Olivia, just give me some time. And you have to promise me to be careful. If he can protect you, you should go to him for safety. Vern, I don't want you to go. I don't have many friends to begin with. I don't want to lose you. Olivia wore a worried face. Relax. I'm the safest person here. He caressed her face. Just hold on. Wait for my good news. He then left in haste, failing to notice the concern on her expression giving way to indifference the moment he left. Taking out a warm napkin, Olivia slowly wiped the part he touched. Even after her skin was red from all the wiping, she didn't stop. Just how disgusting it was to be touched by this kind of person. Olivia simply hoped he wouldn't let her down. Her fingers rubbed the bracelet as she muttered, "Hold on, Mona. Soon, I'll send him to hell to atone for his sins." Things were coming to an end. With Jack and Warren's double investigation, Olivia believed that she'd get to the bottom of it. No matter how insignificant the clue was, she would follow it until she managed to hunt down the enemy's headquarters. Instead of hiding, she deliberately gave the game away to make the enemy impatient. She wanted to lure them into making the move. That way, she'd be able to dig up more clues. The enemy was impatient to have her dead. As long as she was alive, they wouldn't get a good night's sleep. The sheer thought of it put Olivia in a good mood as she had her meal. The night dawned. She footed the bill, ready to leave. Then, she unexpectedly bumped into two familiar faces. A slap resounded clearly in the air when Gordon slapped Yale. Gordon lowered his voice. "How is it that a bad omen like you exists in the family?" Based on the only encounter she had with him, she knew him as a gentle and collected man. Yet, he was showing his fangs right now, with his hands grabbing Yale by the collar. "Have you fucking lost your mind? You spent so much effort trying to be one of the Heaths. None of us knew that Molly, that brat, was Miss Heath. Why are you cutting ties with us right now? This is the chance to climb the ladder. Do you think Mason will trust you?" Yale had his back facing Olivia, so she couldn't see his expression. She could only hear his gruff voice. "Mr. Kingston, it seems like you don't get it yet. I'm doing this not to butter up the Heaths. My wish has never changed since the beginning. My wish is to have Molly. Back then, you used her to threaten me. That's why I sacrificed for you guys for so many years. I think I've done my duty enough as your son." Another slap landed on his other cheek. "If it weren't for us, you and your mother would have starved to death on the streets. You think you could have come this far without me? I'm telling you for the last time, as long as you take those words back, I'll put the past to an end and you'll still be my good son. Your grandfather isn't as forgiving as I am." Chapter 1447. Yale knelt. "I won't change my mind, Dad. Whatever that has to do with your family doesn't concern me. And I'll return everything that belongs to you. Fool, you think your grandfather will let you live. You're jumping sides while knowing so many of our family secrets." Yale chuckled meaningfully. "I don't intend to fight with the Kingston family. I just want to protect the woman I love forever. If you and Grandpa want me dead, I'll have no choice but to expose some of your secrets. Don't forget that I managed the household for many years. I know where the family's biggest vulnerability is." Gordon beat Yale up to let his steam off. When he was done, he spat at Yale. "You're exactly the same as your mother, useless." Olivia hurriedly hid behind a plant. The furious Gordon didn't notice her. Once Gordon left, Yale fished out a cigarette and a lighter with quivering hands. As a result of his dislocated arm, the lighter dropped to the ground next to Olivia's foot. She crouched down to pick it up. The lighter clucked, a flame at its tip. Yale was a mess. His nose and the corner of his mouth were bleeding. His black slacks were covered with black footprints. Olivia's appearance didn't surprise him. Biting a cigarette, he smiled helplessly. "You're welcome for the show." First time witnessing such a forlorn Yale, Olivia couldn't find the right words to say. "You." He sat against the wall, breathing out a cloud of smoke that blurred his face. "He's my father, but I'm an illegitimate child. My mother was a bar girl." He took the initiative to tell his story. She was slightly taken aback by his origin because not even Ethan knew of it. The Kingstons did a good job burying the story in the dark. It was no wonder the youngest son of the Kingston family was spoiled while Yale had to shoulder such a heavy burden. But I have nothing to do with the Kingstons from today onward. Miss Fordham, believe it or not, I didn't do all this to earn favors from the Heath family. I just don't want to put Molly in a tough spot. The Kingston family wasn't honest, and Mason had been aware of it a long time ago. He hadn't made any moves, but his silence didn't mean that he wouldn't do anything in the future. The Kingston family understood that as well. That was why they wanted to use Yale's identity as an in-law to bring the two families together. Once both families were bound for profit, honor, and loss, the Heath family wouldn't be able to lay a finger on them. That explained why Yale had to simp for Crystal for years even though he didn't love her. It was for the Kingston family. Then, karma did its job. When he finally got together with the true Miss Heath, it was the time he left the Kingston family. Aren't you afraid of your grandfather? No, he can't hurt Molly anymore. The only person he can hurt is me. Yale wiped the streak of blood off his mouth. I've never felt so free before. It's so nice to not have to sacrifice my life for the Kingstons. Molly is lucky to have someone like you to love her. Olivia looked at the skinny man. Molly and Yale turned from strangers into each other's salvation, bringing light into each other's lives. Crouching down, Olivia fixed his dislocated arm. Take care. That was the only thing she could do. She clearly knew that Mason wouldn't accept Yale Kingston, who had the Kingstons' support. But without the support from the Kingstons, the Heaths had lesser reason to accept him. Who would entrust their precious daughter to someone without a family background, let alone a man whose life is always in danger? Even though Yale was staying in the Heath residence at the moment, it was merely to look after Molly so that she could focus on her recovery without worries. The day she recovered would be the day they separated ways. Olivia walked into the snow, where Ethan had been waiting for her for a long time. Spreading his arms, he hugged her to shield her from the snowy breeze. I've been waiting for you for so long. Sorry. Let's go home. The sorrow in Olivia melted away. Chapter 1448. Unlike the Kingston residence, the Heath residence was filled with a lively ambiance. By the time Olivia returned home, the maids were cleaning the lawn. They greeted her warmly when they saw her. You're back, Miss Olivia. Tatiana had restructured the household management after Lisa's departure. The maids left were kind. It was such a rare occasion for the Heath residence to be so full of life. Mason had told the maids to clean up every nook and cranny of the house, ready to welcome the new year. Molly called Olivia. The look of dilemma on Molly's face had Olivia asking, Aunt Molly, what's wrong? A few tailored gowns varied in colors and designs were hung on the wall. Olivia assumed that Molly was having a hard time choosing one of them. Having a hard time picking one. Actually, you're lean, so this silver and white. That's not it. Molly held Olivia's hand, frowning. I don't want to attend tomorrow's party. Why not? You should know that we'll be announcing you as one of the family members tomorrow. Grandpa's going to tell everyone that you're his daughter. How can you not attend? Olivia thought that Molly's overthinking and introverted side were giving her a hard time. She cooed, Don't worry. I'll be by your side. If I attend the party, I'll become Miss Heath. That's right. Are you not happy about that? Grandpa, Grandma, and Uncle Linus are happy to have found you. Molly's eyes glistened. They treat me well, and they wish to make up for whatever happened in the past, but, if I become Miss Heath, there's no future for me in Yale. I've lived with the Kingston family long enough to know what kind of family they are. Dad will never agree to our marriage. She failed to control her tears as she continued, Olivia, you might think that I'm being silly, but without him, I would have died in their hands. I wouldn't have been able to come this far to meet my parents. Yale is the nicest person to me in this world. I want to be with him. Don't cry, Aunt Molly. There has to be a way. There's nothing that we can do. Olivia's lips parted, but she didn't know how to comfort Molly. Her hands patted Molly's shoulder in an attempt to give comfort. Those glittering gowns were tantamount to Molly's bright future ahead of her. If I choose this route, Yale and I will have to separate ways. Dad might even arrange another marriage for me. Olivia sighed. Don't be so pessimistic. Aunt Molly. Grandpa will never use your marriage for a bargain. Otherwise, he would have accepted Wayne's offer. He wants me to be happy. And you're more important because you're his daughter. He won't arrange a marriage for you so randomly. As for you and Yale's relationship, he knows everything. He must have something in mind. Wayne was a good example. Molly's tears dried up. Is there a future for Yale and me? Have faith. This world is full of miracles. Believe in Yale too. No matter what happens in this world, he'll never let you go. Yale was beaten up to a pulp, but he didn't fight back at all. He also cut ties with the Kingston family for the sake of their future together. Olivia wiped the tears off Molly's eyes. Yale will be happy to see you dressed in a gown, standing in your rightful place. Can I really do it? Of course, you can. Olivia didn't know what the Kingstons had done to Molly that she had grown up to be so timid. However, with the Heath family behind her back, Molly didn't have to act like that again. Olivia reached for the silver gown. This will do. It suits you. I bet you'll draw everyone's attention tomorrow night. Chapter 1449. It took a while before Olivia managed to comfort Molly. Olivia headed to the study, which was unusually lively. Mason stood in his glasses while Connor sat in his place, his hand holding a paintbrush. The mischievous Zach was holding a paintbrush like a painter as well. How was he able to hold his energy back to sit down and paint? Olivia came closer to take a closer look at the weird creature on the painting. The upper body was drawn into a turtle, which was connected to a bee. Mom, how's my bee? Pretty. She burst into a chuckle. It is pretty. You sure have a wild imagination. You're being too generous with your compliments, Mom. I can draw a book of such drawings, Alicia roasted without lifting her head. Olivia's eyes followed Alicia, who had painted a breathtaking scenery. It was on a completely whole new level compared to Zach's. Unwilling to admit his shortcomings, Zach retorted back at Alicia. Olivia was so used to their little disputes. Meanwhile, Willow was teasing a parrot with a leaf instead of joining the painting journey. Olivia stroked her head and carried her before walking to Mason's side. Mason's eyes were on Connor. When Connor made the final stroke, Mason praised, "Nice. Very nice." Connor put the paintbrush down. His features, which bore a striking resemblance to Ethan's, were calm as always. Mom. He came up to Olivia. Despite being at a young age, he had learned to be expressionless as taught by Ethan. Still, the youthful glint was still there in his eyes. Olivia settled Willow down and brushed the dust off his shoulder. Her gaze was soft. What a beautiful painting. Thanks, Mom. The casual compliment made his ears go red. This kid has a bright future ahead of him. Mason could envision Connor's infinite potential despite the short interaction. Linus had yet to get a girlfriend as of today. Even if he got married and built a family right now, Ethan was already ahead of him by 10 years. Therefore, Mason had put his hopes on Connor. He planned to cultivate the boy into someone capable. Olivia merely smiled. His future depends on him. Connor, take your siblings back to the room. I have something to discuss with your great-grandfather. Okay, Mom. Connor led the others out of the study. His every movement spoke volumes of a well-raised young sir from a rich family. Mason couldn't help but praise, he's a great talent. It's a pity that he takes the surname Miller. Olivia grinned in return. Are you trying to steal him from the Millers? Mason scratched the tip of his nose, feeling slightly guilty. What do you mean by steal? He's your son, so he's one of us too. How fortunate of Ethan. Uncle Linus can grant your wish after he meets the woman of his life, Grandpa. And I'll have to wait for that day to come. When pigs fly, I guess. He seated himself, frustrated. We all know how good Ethan is at seeing the bigger picture. He got married early and he now has kids. Why don't you talk to him? Let's see if he'll agree to change Connor's surname. You're putting me in a tough spot, Grandpa. If Connor's out of the question, there's Zach. No. That little ball of mischief doesn't seem fit for our line of industry. He's hyperactive. Mason took in the details of Connor's painting and couldn't help lamenting that Connor was one of the Millers. Oh, right. What is it that you want to talk about? Chapter 1450. Olivia didn't beat about the bush. Grandpa, what are you going to do with Aunt Molly and Yale? Mason gave her a fleeting glance. Did you come as the middleman? I'm a woman, and I've gone through a lot. Yale has indeed been involved in many awful deeds, but he did all those for Aunt Molly. Her body is weak to begin with. If they break up, I'm afraid. Grabbing a paintbrush, Mason continued painting. Do you know what I told the two men that night? I can't read your mind. I have two conditions for Yale. First, it's to cut ties with the Kingston family. He has fulfilled that. A meaningful smile appeared across his lips. How naive. To cut ties for real is easier said than done. Other than the blood running in their veins, it takes many other factors into account. Even if he wants to leave them for good, they won't grant his wish. What's the second condition, then? If the first was that difficult, the second one should be definitely on another level. Molly can marry him only if he gives her the Kingstons' fortune. Olivia's eyes widened. Businessmen were nowhere near the politicians when it came to playing dirty games. If Mason wasn't her grandfather, she would have burst into a string of curses. Are you criticizing me inwardly? Olivia flashed a smile. Not at all. It's not weird to criticize me for that. I might appear cruel to you guys, but Olivia, the political world is scarier than you imagine. As long as the Kingstons aren't eliminated, I won't be able to have a good night's sleep. And Yale is the best candidate to do the job. Only he can root them out. I have faith in him. Did he give his word? I didn't receive a response. I reckon there's a scale in his mind. He knows what's the most important thing to him. How cruel. One option was his family while the other option was his lover. Which one would Yale choose? What about Ethan? What kind of conditions did you give him? If Mason didn't hold himself back against Yale, Ethan wouldn't have it easier either. I want Connor, blurted Mason. He didn't agree to it. Olivia could guess the answer without asking further. Yup, and the other condition is to have him become one of the Heaths. And he didn't agree to that either. Yes, that brat. Unlike Yale, Ethan rejected the conditions on the spot. Olivia wore a wan smile. Because he knows that you're not the biggest hurdle in our relationship, it's our past. I still can't completely forgive him until today. Even if he agrees to your conditions, he can't do anything without my forgiveness. Besides, he's the only son in his family. How could he agree to that? To agree or not is a different matter from wanting to agree or not. Olivia, Ethan has options, unlike Yale. That's why Ethan has the power to not agree to my conditions. Still, we can see that you're not the most important existence to him. Mason's expression turned stern as he continued, I know that he chose his family instead of you back then without hesitation. Will he abandon you again in the future? You're doing the right thing by not forgiving him. That remark rained on Olivia's parade. She shook her head. When there's no expectations, there's no disappointment. That is why I don't dare to remarry him. I'm afraid to. Ethan has choices, and so do you. Wayne's feelings for you are genuine. Tell me, are you interested in him? He hasn't been married, let alone have a woman. His status is as good as Ethan's. If you want it, I can arrange a marriage between the two of you.